Hey everyone, today I'm looking at a Sony C1 series, also known as the PictureBook. Been after one of these things for a few decades now, and now I can finally check one out and see what it's all about. The original C1 featured a 233MHz CPU, 64MB of memory, and Windows 98, released in September of 1998. The latter options featured a Pentium 2 from 266MHz all the way up to a wailing 400, as well as some larger storage options, but the same at 64MB of memory. You can check out a list of the machines here in the linked Wikipedia article. Looking at the models available, if I had to choose just one of them, I'd definitely pick the Pentium 2 unit for a few reasons that I'll get into later. My model, however, is the third generation, the C1VM, released around September of 2000, featuring the then new Transmeta Crusoe 600MHz CPU. A little backstory on Transmeta: their focus was on efficient low-power CPUs for mobile devices. However, to support the x86 instruction sets, they relied on having an abstraction layer called the CMS, stands for Code Morphing Layer. However, this impacted performance of the CPU substantially, making them feel like they had a third of the power of Intel's offerings at the time, so not a good solution there, but hey, at least they're very power efficient and offered mobile users extra battery life. If you wish to know more about these CPUs, I'll link a few videos in the video description. Moving on to pricing for the models, mine was sold for a retail price of $2,099 USD around February of 2001, falling to less than $1,900 in June of 2001. As the years go by, these devices sort of fall into their own niche for computer collectors. There's something really neat about the size of such a unit like this. Speaking of that, the unit measures 248 by 27 by 152mm and weighs 2.2 pounds. Here it is next to on top of my 14-inch HP ZBook. Overall, a very small laptop for the age of it, especially around 2001. Looking around the unit briefly, there are very minimal scratches and wear marks on this device. It's amazing it's held up this long, to be honest. On the left side, starting with ports, we have Sony's iLink/Firewire, a PCMCIA card, Sony's Magic Gate, and of course the exhaust fan for the CPU. Around the front, there's not much to be spoken of there except some LEDs and the focus wheel for the inbuilt webcam and some air vents. On the right hand side of the laptop, we have the 3.5mm video out. It uses the same sort of cable as a headphone port, speaking of which that's next. Line in, microphone in, and of course USB. DC input as well, very proprietary, and speaking of the same, VGA out, and the Sony jog wheel, which pushes in. Underneath the unit, you won't find much there except the Sony Magic Gate window, a flap for the optional memory expansion, of course the release clips for the battery. On the top, we have the rotating webcam, more on that later, a microphone input. But yeah, as I said, this unit is actually in really nice shape. It's been well looked after. There's minimal wear on the unit itself. The keys, they're not all glossy and shiny. A little bit of wear on the mouse pointer button there, but yeah. So here we go, we've got the laptop opened up, we've got the display here. It's 8.9 inches, 1024 by 480 resolution, nice key feel as well, and we have that rotating webcam that Sony calls the Motion Eye. Not sure on the brand name on that one, but anyway, it flips over to be a 360 degree camera. Got a focus wheel there as well, you can move around to adjust your focus, and you can take photos of people while you're using the laptop. Keyboard itself is rather small but not too bad to type on, featuring a pointing nub and some buttons, as well as stereo speakers. Sadly, this has a faulty left channel, as well as through the audio output. Mine here is definitely the C1VM. You can see here on the side with the dying rubber bumpers. Got some LEDs as well, power button and capture button, which is sort of a double press thing like you'd find on a camera shutter button, as well as the jog wheel on the right hand side. Not too hard to get to unless you've got a bunch of cables and stuff plugged into the laptop. moving on to battery power, you can see here I've got a battery pack installed. Running times anywhere from like 2 hours to 5 hours on the original battery pack, depending on your use case. I've got a aftermarket battery installed because the OG one has bitten the dust years ago. You can see the colours don't quite match up, which is a bit of a shame, but hey, you know, I'd rather have a functioning battery. Included in the unit that I got are these cyber stickers for asset tracking, a user's manual for the optional CD-ROM drive, which we'll check out later, sort of covering the operation of the unit. We have the standard user's guide as well. There's a digital copy installed on the device, so you can check that out later. And yeah, basically just covering the basis of the operations of the machine, pretty standard stuff, as well as the things that you should be getting inside of the box when you buy the unit. One boring driver update link page, as well as the Windows ME standard operations guide for the operating system. And yes, this does come pre-installed Windows ME edition. Basically that's the only OS that this machine seems to support, as well as Windows 2000. Optional accessories that came with my unit are the 3.5-inch floppy disk drive, USB operated. There's the model number there, and Sony even thought to include this really fancy cable. Really good idea in practice. It doesn't quite work out, you'll see that soon. As well as a very expensive CD-ROM drive, and this uses the PC card slot to interface with the laptop. It uses some funky driver wizardry. I've tried using this device on another machine, it didn't work out very well. And thankfully the proprietary VGA output, which is very important to have on this because yeah, they're hard to get. As well as recovery discs. I was pleased to see these, and I have put them on archive.org. I'll put a link in the description for that, so go and check that out if you've got one of these devices. And the catalog options here, you can get extra batteries, CD-ROM drives, DVD-ROMs, all sorts of real cool stuff. Of course, really expensive being a Sony product. It's like the back in the day of Apple products, sort of back then, but yeah, got some catalog stuff to check out. Got the original C1 here and some of the devices you could get for it, as well as Sony's other offerings at the time. Some really neat machines that you just can't get anymore. Of course, I'm going to take it apart and show you guys what's inside, so we'll do that now. It's only like 4 or 5 screws on the base unit, a couple under the keyboard, a few latches and things, and ribbon cables to get out of the way. Otherwise, actually very easy to get into, and I have already replaced the CMOS battery as well. The one thing that actually surprised me about this machine is just actually how well it's made. Most of the plastics and things you find on computers this age are very cheap and very flexible, kind of nasty feeling, but this is actually really nice and solid. It surprised me actually quite a bit. We've got the 80GB hard drive, which is an upgrade. I really should put an SSD in there. And we've got a little peek at the Yamaha sound chip that's on board of this unit. As I said, the left channel seems to be very weak, so I'm not too sure what's going on there. All sounds will be recorded using mono to get around that. And yeah, some real fancy little breakout daughter boards and stuff for the LEDs and buttons and things on the unit, so that's pretty neat as well. And putting the machine back together actually was pretty easy. It's just a bunch of screws under the keyboard and these little caps, which actually were the hardest things to get off. They just kind of clipped on around the battery compartment, but yeah, otherwise actually a really easy machine to disassemble and get into. Sliding my aftermarket miscoloured battery back in, I'm just thankful that this actually works and that you can use it as a portable device. Really nice to have. But yeah, we'll fire it up and get into the OS. But before the OS actually boots itself, because I took out the CMOS battery, of course it's going to complain that it wants a bunch of settings, date and time and stuff like that. So it's just a standard Phoenix BIOS. It isn't anything too fancy in this in terms of options, but hey, it does the job. And yes, we got a nice fancy Sony splash screen and startup sound to go with it as well. Pretty neat. And yeah, of course it's running Windows ME, Millennium Edition. I have seen people try and run different OSs on these, but I think due to the CPU that causes a few issues, so this one must be patched in order to run that transmitter CPU. Alright, let's take a look at the operating system and some of the software that it features. And yes, the display resolution looks like garbage because I'm doing a duplicate output from the LCD screen. Later captures, I will do it direct to the capture device, so the resolution looks a bit nicer. But here we have the user's manual, and you can see just how long it's taking to start up, and this is just one of the problems with that Crusoe CPU. It is really slow, and this is with the machine fully booted. Nothing too interesting in the Vaio manual itself. It's pretty much a digital copy of what you got in the packaging with the paperback copy. But yeah, specs of the machine here, we have the 180 megabytes of memory, the hard drive, the CPU, stuff like that. It's all in there. DirectX 7 installed. The Mobility M1 video chipset supports DirectX 6, OpenGL. Similar performance, I think, to the Radeon Rage Pro or something like that, I've read. And sound, here we have the Yamaha XG chipset. It doesn't seem to have DOS support, but within Windows it seems to work pretty fine. Checking out the Sony bloatware, we've got a few capture devices and stuff like that, software to capture video, and we've got some audio players and bits and pieces in there, as well as some configuration utilities for the device. Pretty basic, not much in there, we'll check that out soon. Some webcam software, and of course the cybercode finder. It's basically just those stickers for asset management, movie shaker and PictureGear. Those are very strange bits of software we'll check out as well. But yeah, might as well start with the more interesting one, which is the webcam. It has a couple of modes. It has still mode and video mode, which is quite nice. I think it outputs a 640 by 480 resolution. Seems to be just a sensor from one of Sony's CCDs, like in the Mavica and stuff like that. I'm getting very familiar feeling images from it, like those devices. And yeah, you've got the capture button as well as the jog wheel, which can control and changes depending on the application that you're interfacing with. So here we've got the stills and long movie mode. This actually ended up locking up my Windows ME experience. You'll see here very shortly about now. I've realized the machine is locked up and it's not actually doing anything. I can't click on anything. But oddly enough, the web camera is still working. So anyway, we'll flip it around and you can see what that is like. It's like a mirrored image as such. Quite cool. Yeah, I don't know what that's useful for, but yeah. And of course it flickers as you're turning it. And of course the focus wheel's under there as well for finer adjustments. Moving on to more Sony bloatware, we've got some movie editor called Movie Shaker. The idea being is you import some video into the device, the software, and it can rejig, put some music in, some like text and things like that. So yeah, I don't know, I'm sure some people had fun with this back in the day. It's pretty crap, to be honest. It sort of feels a bit like Windows Movie Maker with some more colourful buttons, very SpongeBob SquarePants sort of feeling. It takes forever to render out, but yeah, you can see sort of a quick example here what it does. I've sort of put a webcam video together with some text, and yeah, this is what it outputs. Wow, thrilling stuff. We've got the music Visualiser, which the idea I think being is it takes the sound output from whatever media you're playing. Of course I can't play this track because it's not royalty free. I didn't see it do much except sort of slideshow with hallucinogenic graphics over the front, so yeah, very psychedelic. Pretty crap, to be honest. Yeah, it's just more bloatware, I guess, that's included with the machine. But hey, it's pretty cool. It's in there, and you know, I don't know what else it does. But yeah, you can see just how much it's struggling with a few windows and things open. That CPU is, she feels like a 200 megahertz as opposed to a 600. So definitely getting those Pentium MMX vibes from such a chipset. The Sony notebook setup as well has a few basic options and things. You can see the clock frequency of the CPU that you can put in. This is changed through an app which I'll show you later. And yeah, you got some basic adjustments for sound and power on passwords and stuff like that, and boot device, so yeah. Those early 2000s soundtracks that you sort of have bundled in here, but yeah, you can up the volume of the Sony Vaio logo at the start when the computer powers on, so that's kind of nice. Another bit of software is the PictureGear photo library application. I was actually hoping for a little bit more out of this one. I thought it would have some basic editing functionality. It took forever to load up a really small photo. Again, that CPU is just killing the experience, but hey, at least it's power efficient. But yeah, no options or anything to change the image, color, brightness, or contrast, or anything like that. But yeah, you've got some pointing stick adjustments and things, the video driver, of course, the jog wheel, which actually had the majority of the most interesting functionality, I think, of the whole machine in there, which we'll check out soon. And here is that CPU control, where you can change the clock speed and voltage and stuff that the CPU is using. I've left it on maximum, of course. I don't want to go down to 300. I should have done that for fun, actually, thinking about it, but I don't want it to be too slow. And interesting feature is it's got time to charge. That's quite nice. I like seeing how long it takes to charge up the battery. Of course, with some jumper leads changing on the icon there, kind of a novel feature. I don't mind that, actually. It's quite a nice comprehensive control center. We've got the Yamaha sound here. We've got some options there to change the synthesizer and things like that. Once again, I've got a dead left audio output channel, so that's a bit annoying. UI design is basically skins for Windows released by Sony. I didn't change many of these, or I didn't want to change them just because I'm worried that I'd never be able to get my original look back. But yeah, here's where the jog wheel is. You can put applications and things in to launch. You can sort out the layout, as well as a few other little bits and pieces for controlling USB, Firewire, stuff like that. So yeah, some interesting stuff kind of packed into that little app. So yeah, it's kind of neat. In terms of networking, I'm just using a standard 3-COM PCMCIA card, or whatever it's called, and of course I'm connecting it to an unsecured wireless access point, which I got behind me. I just plug it in when I need it, sort of thing, and unplug it when I'm done, of course, but gets the machine online and connected to the World Wide Web, as well as my retro NAS. So if you guys haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. Super handy to have. I've got apps and games and things just straight on this. You can even mount images and stuff right off the NAS itself. Pretty good, like having that. But we'll check out the accessories now. You may have seen I've touched on this or talked about this before, but the ergonomics of this floppy disk drive cable are really annoying because all the ports are on the right hand side of this particular laptop, and this disk drive was bundled or optional for this machine, so ergonomically not very good, but hey, it works pretty well, unlike my external CD-ROM drive. And you may have noticed that the OS is registered to someone else, and that is because I can't reinstall the system using the recovery media because my CD-ROM drive is busted. Seems to have degraded worse actually after sitting in storage. Before it would read a few disks, now it doesn't read any of them at all. So I'm not too sure what's going on there, whether it's capacitors or laser getting weak or something, but it tries to read, but yeah, no luck there. I think it's pretty toast. I'm thinking of trying to put in another CD unit inside of the enclosure, but I've yet to actually find one that works with it. I'm not sure if Sony have locked the firmware down or what's going on, but yeah, subsequent tries have failed. Moving on to DOS, if you use the Yamaha sound chip, it locks up the machine, so I'm using Microsoft Wavetable. But yeah, you can play some games through Windows, and yeah, some DOS games and Windows games. It does a few thanks to the ATI chipset.
Damn, those alien bastards are gonna pay for shooting up my ride.
Well, isn't that how the story goes? You end up falling off a ladder every time in Half-Life. But anyway, that was my look back on the Sony Vaio PictureBook, or C1 series as it's known in other parts of the world. Really cool little laptop. I've really been fascinated for almost 2 decades to try and track one of these machines down and, you know, see what it's about. And, you know, they're really expensive when they came out, and of course not many of them around here in New Zealand. I was very lucky to find this one. I've only ever found 2 of them online for sale here in New Zealand, so of course this being the second one I bought it. But yeah, really cool device. Surprisingly well made as well, well put together. The plastics aren't creaky, so yeah, if you guys are looking for one of these units, I'd definitely try and track down the Pentium 2 unit, just because it might have some better compatibility with other operating systems. But yeah, for now this one works a treat. Glad to have the battery in there, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the look back on this model and kind of what they're all about. And yeah, neat little device. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed anyway. Have a good one, and we'll catch you guys soon.